acknowledge the presence of Dr. Ellie Week, the president of WAD. Dr. Week, would you just stand and wave? And before the afternoon, we'll have him up here to say a word of greetings from WAD, although he had representation last evening. I'm delighted to present to you this afternoon our Directors of Family Ministries of the Southern Africa Indian Ocean Division. Two wonderful people of God, very well trained. Dr. Cajelo Raquena has a PhD in marriage and family therapy from Loma Linda University. He has been a pastor, he's been a conference director of a whole bunch of things, secretary of the union, and they're from Botswana. When they came to SID from Botswana, he was the secretary. Dr. Boitumelo Raquena, the wife, I'm just trying to be African. In the US, we say his wife, but here you guys say the wife. Okay, so the wife, she has a doctorate in clinical psychology. So they're both well prepared. They have two daughters, Canelo and, yeah, I knew it was one of the lows. Canelo and Tetelo. Canelo and Tetelo. Stay woke. So people of God, do pray for them. And let's stay woke as they come to present on a very important topic. How to tame the tiger. What tiger is that? Dual career marriages. Elder and Sister Wilson spoke about that in their greeting. And it's happening in Africa as well. So stay woke so we can be ready when Jesus comes.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. We are glad to be here also this afternoon and also during this weekend, that we learn together, we get challenged together, we make conclusions and decisions together. And also we have been blessed with the few presentations already that have been presented. And we want to appreciate the presenters that have gone before us. And we know that some of those presentations we take bits and pieces there to make some recommendations today and tomorrow. We want to push you a little bit somewhere and give you some recommendations that you think about and digest some issues together. Hey, I think it is off. Good man, good man. Dual career marriages. Dual career marriages. There was a wave in the 50s. There was a wave in the 50s where we began to see in the literature, in Europe especially and US, where you began to see that both men and women were beginning to earn a salary. And then another wave in the 1980s when we begin to see a high rise of dual career marriages. And you'll understand that in the 80s, as we present tomorrow, when we were getting on the peak, on the plateaus, and on the high on divorce in Africa that time, in the 80s, where the divorce rates were hitting high in Africa. And also urbanization was going up in Africa that time in the 80s. And also we are beginning to experience men and women working together, earning a living together, instead of one going to the mines and then the other remaining in the farm or remaining with the children. That becomes a challenge.
And one of the reasons also which, after talking about industrialization, which brought urbanization, where men and women were forced to go to work. One of the reasons was also economic hardship, which forced the men and women to go to work. So there was also professionals, and if they were not professionals, they were on the process of obtaining a degree, education, or profession.
Because now earning a living was counted in money, living in a town, living in a city or somewhere. So professionals became more of importance as life partners. And that becomes something else.
So what is dual career marriage? We are talking about both the husband and wife working as professional, not only as professional, but also to earn a salary. And they are also expecting to go up when it comes to salary and position. Not only that, but also when they further their education or even taking professional courses to improve themselves.
Yeah, we also have dual earners, where the husband and the wife they are working, but not necessarily that both are professionals. Sometimes one is a professional, sometimes the other one is not. Sometimes both of them are non-professionals, but they are earning a salary. But what we are looking at, it is dual, where both, yes, are earners of salary, but it is they are professionals. And each one of them is expecting to go higher in the ladder of profession and promotion and salary. So that becomes something else.
So it should also be noted that though dual career marriage has its own challenges, unique challenges, it may also share some challenges with the dual earners. What are we talking about? We are talking about where they perceive gender role attitudes the same way, that a man ought to do this and a woman ought to do this. A man has to be a breadwinner, while the woman has to be a nurturer, taking care of the household and taking care of the children and the husband.
And when you look at some of those definitions there, traditional marriages, they have clear cut that a man should do this and a woman should do this. And versus egalitarian marriages, husband and wife relate or perceive each other as equals. Even though we still have a wife doing most of the chores at the home, even if they are both professionals, and they believe that they are sharing responsibilities. The wife still has two jobs, two full-time jobs. In the dual career system, a wife, most of the time, has two full-time jobs. She is employed outside and she works at home, more than the husband. And also we say the husband is helping. He's helping, it's not doing responsibilities, it's helping the wife. Yeah, so it complicates the matter.
And what does that mean? It means that the needs of each other are not taken care of. When the other one comes tired and you expect to be satisfied in the bedroom, then you just take the leftovers. Because somehow you are a man, you are an African man, you can't help, and therefore that's what you get.
There are 4 types of dual career earners. These types, they make this issue of dual career complicated. And some of the conclusions very dicey. Because you'll find some are accommodators, One spouse is high in career and is less involved in family issues. Is invested in the career but less in the family. The other two, both are highly involved at work and also at home. One of them is less that, more that. And then we have allies who both spouses are involved with work and home. They put work and home at the same par. That the work is important, home is also seriously important.
So I think you can see where you fit when it comes to these types of dual career marriage. You have to see exactly where you fit so that you can see what devil are you fighting. So you can see that it's very hard to balance work responsibilities and family matters. So it's to find out how are we doing that? Is our marriage suffering because of the work, or the work is suffering because of, that's exactly what these types are all about.
So you'll see that there are various conclusions regarding the advantages and challenges of dual career marriages based on the 4 types. And also another factor that we'll highlight is based on where you are, a young couple or middle-aged couple or senior couple. When you put all those factors together, some of the problems are magnified in those levels.
So now we are going to look at advantages of dual career marriage. It's not all bad. It has its own advantages. When it comes to what the researchers are reporting about dual career marriages for wives, it says that they have high levels of marital satisfaction. There's personal well-being, or they're self-actualized. When it comes to that, there's also economic independence for the family, and there's a greater power when it comes to a woman.
So when you look at that, also you'll see that there's economic independence for family, greater marital power, so that even in tithes and offerings, if there are 2 returning tithes and offerings faithfully, that is a benefit also to the church. Unlike if it's just only 1, if there's a potential of 2. That is something. And also that it supports egalitarian living. It empowers women, self-actualization, to feel somebody and a contributor to the society or wherever you are. That you didn't go to school in vain, you are earning a living and also contributing to life itself.
So it also, the literature also mentions that women's education plus earnings, salary, are positively related to the likelihood of who they will marry. And you are likely to be married when you are educated and you have professional. Remember, we have economic hardships here, and we want to somehow deal with it. But at the same time, making sure that we are taking care of our families.
We see that more time at school, it is also equals to later and mature marriages. And also you'll see also when you deal with the divorce tomorrow, that a professional woman, it means that she takes time at school. And that means also it is later marriage, later parenting, and also it pushes also the age of the man up before getting married. It means that the early marriages among dual career those who are in dual career, it begins to go up than in the past decades. And later marriages have more stability of staying than younger couples who get married. These ones, they seem to be more prepared, but not necessarily prepared for other challenges that are there in marriage.
Usually when it comes to traditional marriage, the wife is, especially when he's socialized with the idea that women need to be belongs to the house and taking care of the husband and the children. The woman is more likely to refuse promotion and do more work at home than at work.
It's also interesting that when you go to hospital or you go to a clinic to see people who have taken their sick child, sick family relative there, they are mostly women. People who attend most of the time parent-teacher meetings at school, at primary school and secondary school are mothers more than fathers. Huh? So the mothers, they do a lot of compromising. They maneuver between the work outside there and what needs to be done at home more than fathers do, even if you are both professionals.
Research was done, and it was in different countries. In this research,
thank you. I'd like to just affirm the last three speakers and to add a note onto that. It hits me that when Dr. Matimba was asking what is the role of family ministries, and I think about it across all levels of the church, and I heard Dr. Oliver respond. I've heard him and Elaine advocate actively on. I wonder though, is there a larger model that we can take even from this conference? That is there a role, and like the last two speakers, is there a role family ministries can have in relationship to administration? Dr. KK was speaking to it a bit, on how they can be a conscience of sorts, or they could offer counsel. Could it be that the administrators in our conferences and our institutions could be more sensitive to the family ministry directors and the offices? So when they see things happening in the conference or in the field, they would be invited, empowered, or at liberty to share their counsel. Now, obviously, it wouldn't always be taken, but I think that would be another level of sensitivity, that even as we talk about these high, lofty principles, when we go back, if we face realities in the office where they can't, they're not listened to, they're not heard, and perhaps in some strategic plans they're not even mentioned, how can we, and maybe you could speak to this, how can we elevate the role of family ministries, because we know the importance of it, and the fact that it's central to the good of every conference, every church, whatever. How can we increase that role? How can we increase the visibility or listening to our family ministries directors?
That's a good question, but it's directed to me. How can I increase my own visibility? That would be tough. Somebody else would increase it. The challenge, we in our division, as we go around unions, we have sensitized both leaders that we can meet and also pastors to realize this. Because these positions of the church is rotational. You are there tomorrow you are somewhere else. And as Dr. KK has said, today it is you, tomorrow is me. So let us bear that in mind. We have pointed that to fellow pastors that this becomes an issue. More especially sometimes in African setting where we fix each other by transfers. That becomes a problem. And it becomes a culture. What you do as an administrator, you make it a culture, it is going to be done, and it becomes a legacy for that union or that conference. So let us make a culture that is more humane and more responsive. We believe that the call of the minister is a serious call. And the spouses that we have married also, they believe that I believe. But some changes and some calls, if they are not rapid on the moment, people can negotiate and take time with their bosses and transfer or do something, or the children write exams and then go the following year after 3 months, after the exams. And I think that way it will be humane. Otherwise, it is tough. We try to point out this and talk about this. And I think also this conference, it is timely that we talk about that and talk about this among us as leaders, that this thing is serious.
I want to add to Dr. Raquena's comments in response to Dr. Baker's, and that is family ministries directors who are here need to be more intentional of speaking up in meetings. The reason you are on those committees is to advocate on behalf of the family, is to be a sensitizing agent, if you will. Invariably, we like to blame administrators, but administrators have their plates filled with lots of issues. So we can't expect them to remember and think about everything. The more we talk, the more we raise the issues, the more sensitized the institution becomes. There's something else that I think that we need to be intentional about, because the players, the couple themselves, they're not children. And we need to be able to be more intentional as a church to do in-service for young pastors and their spouses. You also need to understand that we need to be intentional about nurturing our marriage. And many times we're not. Elaine and I go to something that we're not presenting every year for our marriage. We are always presenting, but we also need to just listen to someone else and to our being challenged by what someone else is saying. So every year we find the opportunity to go someplace where we can listen to someone challenge us about what we're doing or not doing in our relationship. The truth is, skills can be taught and can make a difference in the way husbands and wives relate to each other. It's not whether or not you have young children or teenagers. We all have to go through that if we have children. And if you're African, you're having children, and more than two. If less and less so, but more than two. So if you're having this reality, the truth is you need to be prepared for it. If you're going to be a pastor, you go to school. You learn skills. If you're going to be married, you also need to learn how to manage, how to negotiate what's happening. And something else. Can we develop a culture in our conferences and unions, just as we speak in the public spaces of our fields, that pastors need to marry women who are understanding that they are part of the ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church? When I was doing my PhD in sociology, I had a classmate who wrote a doctoral dissertation. Her parents were diplomats for the American government, and her dissertation was The Accidental Diplomat. Elaine, accidental pastor. If you're a pastor, your wife is a pastor. Are you with me? If you're a pastor, your wife is a pastor. And you need to be getting better and better, not beta. Better. And for you to get better, you need to both understand that you're both pastors. You're a pastor. So if you're marrying a wife, marry someone who understands ministry, someone who loves Jesus, someone who understands that you're together to make a difference in the lives of people. If you're a pastor, you just can't marry anyone just because she looks a certain way, just because you can negotiate the la bola. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. So I'm just challenging you as leadership in the church, family ministries and administrators, family ministry directors, those of you who are here, speak up. Speak up. They didn't elect you because you're pretty. They elected you because you have a voice that needs to be heard. And the leadership of the church needs to hear the counsel. I've said to people at the General Conference, quit traveling so much, especially the young ones. I said, you have little children. Your children, if they're a year old and you're gone for a month, that's a significant portion of their life. You're coming home and they don't even know who you are. So you can't be saving the world and losing your own children. You know why I'm here today? I'm the son of a pastor. But I'm the son of a pastor who was committed to family. My parents, and my father was a great evangelist. Quick story. I remember being a child, very small, not even in grade school yet, and my father doing evangelism in a city away, far away. He was doing, I think, a 1 or 2 week meeting. And they loved the meeting so much. We're in the mission field in Latin America, and they asked him, could he stay another week? You know what he said? Yes, if you pay for my family to come. He was not about to stay another day away from his family. Some of us, we get the high of preaching to people and being up front. This is wonderful. But the real life of ministry and of being a pastor is making sure that your family is making it to heaven. That's why I'm here. Because my father, who was a pastor, was not so busy trying to baptize everybody and losing his children. By the way, some of you know that my mother recently died. We did her funeral last Sunday. I have an older brother who works for GCAS, and I have 3 younger sisters. One is a dentist, one is a family therapist, and one is an educator. And I did the eulogy last Sunday. And one of the things I said was, because of my parents' commitment, every single one of their children are still in the church. That needs to be a high value, but we need to be intentional.
Do I have it? Thank you so much. I'd like to thank you for the presentation. One note I hear recurring is the fact that as administrators, as we care for the pastors under our care, we need to be humane. I've been blessed by the presentations, but I realize that when I start family life presentations, I start from the Christian home. What's a Christian home composed of? 2 Christians. That's the beginning point. And so if we start from that understanding that we're both Christians and so we have higher values that are binding to us, then every other thing should fall in place. Because we're assuming that those who are in charge of family life in the conferences, the unions, and the other institutions will be humane. They may not be humane. They may just be persons who are there who don't care. So let's come back to fundamentals. Today we're talking stewardship all through this quarter, but we're saying stewardship is not principally about money. It's about spirituality, and it's reflected, therefore, in the giving. So let's come back to basics. One of the real issues that we're dealing with in leadership is we're dealing with leadership that is all about mechanics. It's not about spirituality. It's not about care for people. So let's come back to asking ourselves, who are we and where are we going to? 30 years ago, back in the seminary, a friend of mine who is now in administration, he said, sometimes when we see the way leaders act, it's as if they've been up to heaven and they've seen that place isn't real. It's a myth. And so they came down and said, look, don't let's tell the brethren that that place isn't real. Let's just have a good time here. You know what? Now we are the ones in charge. And we're the ones living that way. As I try to wrap up, assumptions in marriage. You talked about the dual family, dual work scenario. But there's also reality I think we need to ask ourselves. As pastors, we make the commitment to serving the Lord. Now, how about a scenario such as the GC president mentioned, where the wife makes a sacrifice for the first few years of the marriage so that at the end of the day, when the children are a bit grown up, then she can go to work. I didn't hear you consider that. Is that still something that can be done? And instead of a nanny that has no commitment, and that's exactly the same route that my wife and myself took, how about someone in the family that you have connection and commitment with, who you can also collaborate with, sponsor in school, so that that could be the person who you have shared value with to help take care of the children, to mind the children, if you have to do that. But I think ultimately, we have to come to a point where we're making decisions as to what exactly are our priorities. Our priorities about living a comfortable life or raising up children who will be in the church. I think we have to make those decisions early. My wife and myself, 20 years ago, just before we got married, I asked her, honey, you sure you want to marry me? Yeah, I haven't taken 3 minutes now. I know you finished by 3:15. So, said, now, you want to get married to me. Do you realize that tomorrow I could get transferred to where the mosquitoes are as fat as your fist and where there's no power? You sure you still want to get married to me? And she said, yes. I thought presenting the worst case scenario would be better than to tell flattering stories about all the possibilities that were there. I think that's why she's still here 20 years later.
Thank you so much. I wish you had more time to discuss many things. Thank you all for the contributions. We'll have announcements before we do the benediction. Thank you.
Just that all of us are getting a bit worried about the lost bag we announced this morning. The problem is that the pastor has his computer in his bag, and he needs his computer back. Now, it looks as if the bag was exchanged because this one was left there with a coat, this coat inside, and his was taken with a computer inside. So we are pleading with you to look inside your bag again. If your bag has a computer that is not for you,
you don't have your coat,
and you lost your coat, then this may be your bag, and the bag you have might be his bag. So please, he needs his computer back. He needs his computer. So we are pleading with you once again, recheck your bag again. The pastor is saying, come and get your jacket. But we know when you bring that back, we just have to exchange once again. Okay. Now, there in your rooms, there is a form that you need to fill. The hospital